back to part 2 of those winning the Daytona 500 means season-long success. On part 2, you're going to see the drivers struggled more from 2001 to 2010 after winning the Daytona 500 than the drivers did from 1990 through 2000. Anyway, for y'all to see for yourselves, let's get into the video. All right, guys, we're going to start with the 2001 Daytona 500 with winner Michael Waltrip. For just this one year, we're not going to discuss how his season was because he did not have the best of seasons, but I think it's obvious about what played a lot into those struggles after losing Dale Earnhardt on the final lap of the Daytona 500. It obviously had to affect him, and he probably didn't even want to be at the racetrack for the rest of the year. So we're going to give him a pass. We're not going to talk about his stats. So we're going to move on to 2002. The 2002 winner is Ward Burton. He would go on to win one more race, score only 3 top 5s and 8 top 10s, and finish a disappointing 25th in points. So obviously for Ward, winning the Daytona 500 did not lead to season-long success. He was involved in a lot of crashes throughout the season, and they just struggled to run well. I mean, it's that simple. They, besides winning the Daytona 500 and later on in the year winning at New Hampshire, they had a terrible year. But the only thing that saved it is winning the Daytona 500, because even if you do have a bad year and you win that race, you're still going to deem it a success to a point. But I know Ward and Bill Davis Racing had to be disappointed after starting out the year with on such a high after winning the Daytona 500 to struggle and wind up finishing only 25th in the point standings. All right, on the 2003, we got Michael Waltrip winning his second Daytona 500. This year would be a good season for Michael, considering how his whole career went. He would have a total of 8 top 5s, 11 top 10s, and he would pick up an additional win in the fall race at Talladega, which would wind up being his final Cup Series win. And he would wind up finishing 15th in the points. And Michael very easily could have been in the top 10 in points, but he had a rough stretch of where he finished outside the top 30, 4 out of 6 races. And it hurt his points. But for Michael, I consider that a pretty good year. And he was able to win the Daytona 500 and actually be able to celebrate it this time and enjoy it. So I'm pretty sure Michael was happy with his 03 season, even though everybody on that team would have wanted to be in the top 10 in points because it was achievable. But due to some bad luck and a few other things, they was not able to accomplish that. 2004, Dale Earnhardt Jr. wins his first Daytona 500. And Dale Earnhardt Jr. would go on to have the best season of his career as far as wins are concerned. He would have 16 top 5s, 22 top 10s, and 6 wins, and wind up finishing 5th in the points. And 2004 was the first year of the chase system, which is now known as the playoffs. And Dale Earnhardt Jr. was in serious contention to win the championship, but he had 3 lackluster races in a row that dropped him out of contention in the middle of the chase. Not only was it his best season, and so far on the list, the best season of any of the winners of the Daytona 500, if it would not have been for that 3-race stretch, we very easily could have been talking about Dale Earnhardt Jr. winning a championship in 2004. So I would consider this to be an awesome year for Dale Earnhardt Jr., especially when you look at the fact that he never won 6 races again throughout his career. Moving on to 2005, Jeff Gordon wins his 3rd Daytona 500. He would go on to win 2 out of the next 8 races to start out the year with 3 wins in the first 9 races. It looked like Jeff Gordon was going to have just a classic Jeff Gordon year and contend for the championship all the way to the wire. But over the summer, everything fell apart. They did not run well. They got involved in wrecks of their own making, not his making. And they were generally not competitive. He had the least amount of top 5s he had since his rookie season with 8. He only had 14 top 10s. And after they decided to part with Robbie Loomis, after they wound up missing the 10-race chase, he would get one win with his new crew chief Steve Hart at Martinsville to sweep the Martinsville races in 05. So he would wind up with 4 wins. But it was a disappointing year for Jeff as he'd finished outside the top 10 in points in 11th for the first time since his rookie season in 1993. So he won his 3rd Daytona 500, and he did win 3 other races, which was really good. Most drivers would be ecstatic for that. But for Jeff Gordon's standards, it was a disappointment. So I'd say as a whole, even though he won the Daytona 500, he probably was not very happy with his 05 results. Moving on to 2006, Jimmie Johnson. Jimmie Johnson would have 13 top 5s, 24 top 10s, and 5 wins total. And he would win your 2006 championship, which, as we all know, was the first of 5 straight titles for Jimmie Johnson, which is a NASCAR record and probably will never be broken. So this one goes without saying that 2006, after winning the Daytona 500, Jimmie Johnson had a really great year. All right, on to 2007, Kevin Harvick, and one of the best finishes in Daytona 500 history by barely beating Mark Martin to the line. But that would be most of his highlights for that year. He would only score 4 top 5s all year, 15 top 10s. But due to him being a good, consistent driver, he was able to qualify for the chase and finish 10th in the final point standings. But that team just did not have the speed for most of 07. They struggled with having to run the car of tomorrow, which was introduced that season, and also running the current car at the same time, as they were splitting the season amongst the 2 vehicles. The other positive that Kevin Harvick did have, though, he did win the All-Star race in 2007. So even though, for the most part, he had a rough season, he won 2 of the biggest events of the season, mainly speaking of the Daytona 500. So I would say Kevin Harvick probably would have considered that a good season, but not a great season by no means. 2008, we have Ryan Newman winning the Daytona 500. But that would be all the success that Ryan Newman would really have all season, as he would only have 1 other top 5 the entire season and a total of 8 top 10s, and finished a very disappointing 17th place in the points. And this was a continuation of what had happened in 2007 for him at Team Penske. So before the season was over, he would announce that he would go to join Tony Stewart in 2009 in the newly formed Stewart-Haas Racing in the number 39 Chevrolet. So besides winning the Daytona 500, Ryan Newman had a very disappointing season in 2008. On to 2009. After going winless in 2008, Matt Kenseth would start the season off with a bang by winning not only the Daytona 500, but he would win the 2nd race of the season at Auto Club Speedway. After that, though, he would struggle. For most of the year, he would only have 5 other top 5s for a total of 7. He would have a total of 12 top 10s and the 2 wins, and finish a disappointing 14th place in the points, failing to make the chase. So even though he started out the season by winning the first 2 races, Matt Kenseth was a championship contending driver throughout most of his career. So while I know he was thrilled to have won his first Daytona 500, overall the season had to be a little bit of a disappointment for Matt. The last one on the list for this video, 2010, Jamie McMurray. And at that time was the biggest surprise winner of the Daytona 500 since Michael Waltrip had won it in 2001. He would go on to have 9 top 5s, 12 top 10s, and 3 wins. The 3 wins was a career high in one season. He would, unfortunately, due to some inconsistency, miss the chase. But Jamie McMurray's 2010 season is what inspired the new rules for 2011 through 2013, where they would have the drivers 11th through 20th with the most wins would get the last 2 spots in the chase, because the sport wanted to make it seem like winning mattered more than what it had. And for Jamie McMurray, even though he had missed the chase, he had to have been thrilled with the 2010 season, not only winning the Daytona 500, but winning at Charlotte and the Brickyard 400. There was a point in 2009 he didn't know if he'd have a ride. He had ran from 2006 through the end of 2009 with Roush Fenway when they were at the top of the game and had struggled and had disappointed a lot of people because everybody thought when he got there he was going to succeed and win a lot of races, and it just never happened. He only won 2 races at Roush over those seasons. They were both on plate tracks. But considering where he was at 6 months earlier, before the 2010 season started, and how his career had went to that point, Jamie McMurray had to have been thrilled with his 2010 season, even though it was not a great season points-wise. All right, guys, that concludes part 2 of this 3-part series. As you can see, most of the drivers struggled to take the success from winning the Daytona 500 through the end of the season. The only one that reached their ultimate goal was Jimmy Johnson by winning the 2006 championship. And the other one that came close was Dale Earnhardt Jr. by finishing 5th in the points and winning a total of 6 races in 2004. And there was drivers like Ward Burton, Matt Kenseth, and Ryan Newman that really struggled to do what they've done most of their career. It just happened to be the season they won the biggest race in the sport, even though all those drivers I've named off have won countless races, finished in the top 10 of points. For some reason, it just did not come together in those particular seasons. So I think we're starting to see, just because you win the Daytona 500, possibly is not going to mean that you're going to have season-long success. And it's some of the best drivers in the sport that have won championships, like Kevin Harvick would go on to win a championship. Ryan Newman's contended for championships, finished 2nd in 2014. Obviously, Jeff Gordon was on this list and struggled, didn't finish in the top 10 of points. He's a 4-time champion. It's usually still the good drivers for the most part and the more successful drivers, but that does not mean possibly that's going to lead to success throughout the rest of the season. Well, guys, that's going to conclude this video. If you like the video, like and subscribe. We'll be back in part 3, and we're closing in on Daytona. It's time to go racing, guys.